everybody. Welcome to Stamping with Melva. I'm Melva Peters, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in British Columbia, Canada. Geez, I got distracted. It's Saturday, and I normally come on at 11 o'clock in the morning Pacific on Saturday mornings, but we had our team meeting this morning, so I'm a little later, and I'm sitting at my desk kind of working away and realized I was a minute or two late coming on, so sorry about that. But I'm here now. And I'm just checking to see that I'm live, and I am. That's great. Hopefully people will join me. So today I thought I would make a card. I haven't used this stamp set. We got this stamp set for free when we, demonstrators, if we attended On Stage, which is the Stampin' Up! Convention. They call it On Stage these days. Hey, Nancy. And we got the In the Moment stamp set, and I decided I was going to make a card. I got a beautiful thank you card from Glenda Mollett, who's a demonstrator in Port Alberni. And I just love the card, and she used embossing techniques. So I thought I would use the same stamp set, do some embossing to create a card. It's a little different colors, a little bit different shapes, but really I was inspired by Glenda's beautiful card that she sent me. So I'm going to switch over to my desktop, and we'll get started on the card. Okay. All right, so this is the In the Moment stamp set, and it just is lovely with these great images. I love this one where they're looking out. I can imagine looking out. Now there's a glass of wine, so maybe not, but looking out from the ferry, looking out because there's seagulls. But anyway, I imagine this looking out at the ocean for this girl with a hat. And then this great one, if you're a dog lover, this is perfect, where you're laying in bed with your dog cuddled up and a cup of tea or coffee. And then this one just kind of gazing out at whatever she's looking at with coffee in her hand. Just very relaxing. And some really pretty sentiments. You're in my thoughts. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax. And that is just so true. Take some time for self-care. So that's the stamp set. It is a rubber stamp set. Lots of things you can do with this. You can color it with, or you can stamp it in Tuxedo Black Memento and color it with your blends. You could do some watercoloring on it. But this one, I'm going to do it clean and simple, and I'm going to emboss it using white embossing powder. So let me bring in the rest of the things that I'm going to use. I am using Blackberry Bliss. So I've got a piece of Blackberry Bliss that is cut 5.5 by 8.5. And I'm going to score it at 4 1/4. And that's all I need my trimmer for. All right, so this is the side I scored on. So I flip it over to the other side, which is fold into the mountain. So into the raised piece. My bone folder. There we go. Good burnish. Okay, so I'm going to actually make this a landscape card. Now I've cut a piece of, this is the layering vellum that is part of the Artfully Composed suite. And I love vellum for the background. You can use basic white or very vanilla, whichever you want, and you could do some embossing or do nothing at all, just have it basic white. But I decided I wanted a little bit of texture. So this piece is from the layering vellum. Now, when you're using this particular one has writing on it, and it actually, you can read it. So make sure you get it going the right way. Hey, Vicky, welcome from Australia. Now, when I adhere vellum, sometimes you can see the adhesive through the vellum. So you could use glue dots. This one may not be quite so bad because it's got the writing. But because I'm going to put a piece of cardstock on top of this, I'm going to just use my Stampin' Seal, and I'm going to put just a couple of strips of Stampin' Seal kind of down the middle. And I'm going to have the edges kind of free floating, just because I can cover up. Oh yeah, you can definitely see the Stampin' Seal. You can even see it on the camera. So this is going to be covered up. So I'm not worried about this, but if I'd put it in the corners, you would definitely see it. Okay. so now I've got my card base. I've got another piece of Blackberry Bliss, and then I've got a scrap piece. This is what I'm going to do my stamping on. And I'm going to use this one here, the girl looking out of the window. And I'm going to stamp it in Versamark, and then I'm going to emboss it with white embossing powder. Now I'm going to stamp this one kind of in the middle here because I'm going to cut this out using a die. And then I'm going to also, while I'm doing this, I'm going to stamp my sentiment in Versamark and emboss it as well. So we will just ink up this stamp in Versamark. If you've got an embossing buddy, we don't sell them anymore, unfortunately. It just will take the static off, and probably I should have used it. Now you won't be able to see that, but I'm going to cover this with embossing powder. Now this is the white embossing powder. I keep my embossing powders in plastic containers just because I find it easier to manage than the little jars. So I have a separate container for each. And you could get little plastic spoons or even, spoons of some sort, but I don't have them in here. So I'm just going to take and do this and cover this. Now, and you can tap off your excess. I just find this easier than the little jars so that I don't get embossing powder all over my workspace. I'll just leave that out. And now I'm going to stamp my sentiment as well on this scrap. Cover up my Versamark. Ooh, just about dropped that. That wouldn't have been good. See, I'm kind of klutzy when it comes to this. I probably should have cut that. There we go. And tap this off. There we go. So you can see how much that, even without heating this embossing powder yet, you can see how much the white pops on this Blackberry Bliss. Okay, so let's bring my heat tool in, and hopefully this isn't too loud. You want this on the highest setting of your heat tool, and you want to hold it on your image. You don't want to move it around, just hold it. Hey Nancy, welcome. Hold it until you start to see, and mine's starting to melt, the embossing powder will go from being matte, dull, and kind of granular looking to being shiny. And so now once it starts to heat, you can just move your heat tool around until it is all melted. Now, I've got my fingers far enough away from this, so I'm not too worried about burning my fingers, but if you have a smaller piece, you can use your take your pick tool to hold your cardstock in place so that you don't burn your fingers. This heat tool is very hot. Once it heats up, it doesn't take long to actually, there we go, melt your embossing powder. Okay, so now I've got this. Yeah, it's sunny here, beautifully sunny day here on Vancouver Island, and but definitely was frosty when I walked the dog at about 7:30 this morning. Now I pulled out two different sets of dies. I pulled out my stitch rectangles, and I also pulled out my scallop contours because I wasn't sure what I wanted to use with this. So I thought I would wait until I had it stamped to see which one I wanted to use. You know what, I probably could have actually inked up and stamped my sentiment here in the corner. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use that size of the stitched rectangle. And once I cut it out, I'm going to stamp my sentiment in the corner. I think I have room. I wasn't sure that I was going to have room to do that. So let's go. Bang. Let's bring my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. Get that sort of aligned. That down. Oops, I've got my embossing plate underneath there. I don't want that. So there we go. Now, I was watching a video the other day and somebody shared a trick, and I really need to remember to try it. So sometimes when you run your plate through, you get that clunky noise. I don't know if you heard that. I was told the other day that if you put them on an angle, so instead of having, I don't have mine here, but instead of having them straight going through like this, put them at an angle on your plate and you won't get that clunky noise. I have to remember to try that because it always, particularly when I'm in a live and I get that horrible clunking noise. All right, so let's just pull that out. So I've got that embossed. If it doesn't work out, I've got my my sentiment embossed. But let's try this and see if I can actually get it going the right way. That's the last thing I need to do is get it upside down, since I'm kind of doing this on my piece. There we go. Now, that's what happens when you don't try these things out first. You don't actually know which is going to be. So that's kind of fun of making cards on the fly. All right, there we go. Now I've got that stamped and I've got my embossing powder, and I will just grab my heat tool. Again, keep your fingers out of the way. And just hold it in place until it starts to melt. There we go. It's that magic. I just love embossing. This was one of the very first techniques I ever did long before I was involved in Stampin' Up. I'm talking going back to probably the late 80s, early 90s, when I was making cards, not Stampin' Up cards. And I didn't have a heat tool. I used an old frying pan to heat, but heat embossing was my absolute favorite thing to do. All right, so now the other thing I might do, so this is actually bothering me that it's popping up. So I think I'm going to try and put some glue dots down. And I've got some of the pastel pearls that I might try and cover over the glue dots. So we'll see how this works. But I'm going to use, let's see, I've got some, this is the Fresh Freesia ribbon, and I just thought it would be pretty. So I'm going to wrap this around my card. And I'm going to tie a bow. So I want to make sure I leave myself lots of ribbon. So I'm going to tie. So I've got this wrapped on the inside, the inside of my card. And then I'm going to tie my bow over here on the right-hand side of my card. Tie that. Now, I've talked about this little trick. When you want to tie a bow and you want the tails to go in a certain direction, turn your card upside down and have it. So I want my tails going towards the top now. And so then you can start to tie your bow, and you will find that you will be happier with your bow because you'll get the tails going in the right direction. Nothing frustrates me more than trying to tie a bow and I've got the tails going in the opposite direction to how I want them to go. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I find it particularly frustrating. Oh, thank you, Alice. You're sweet. All right, so let's see if I can tie this. So now I've got my two tails going towards the bottom. There we go. And now I can turn it back the right way and fuss with it until I get the size of bow that I want. Once you have it tightened, you can actually move, kind of get it going the right way. Turn it if you want. Let's just take these. I thought this fresh freesia was really pretty with the Blackberry Bliss. Who doesn't love a big, nice bow on their card? Okay, I'm going to take a glue dot. And here. I'm just going to take a glue dot and put underneath my bow where I want it to stay so that it's kind of held in place. And actually, that might have done the trick to hold my vellum down as well. It doesn't seem to be flopping around like it was. All right, so now I'm going to use dimensionals to pop this up. Now, I like to put a dimensional in the middle just because I don't like the middle to sag. If you've got a big piece of cardstock, I do this with sentiments as well. I stagger my dimensionals down my sentiments so they're not all in a line so that it doesn't, the middle doesn't sag. And then we will put this like this. There we go. That's not too bad. Get that out from there. Actually, it's one flap or one piece of my bow that's longer than the other. So that's a little better. There we go. All right, and now I have some of these. I love these pastel pearls. So I've got some that are in the Highland Heather, and I think they'll just go really nicely. So we will just kind of put some of these on like that. And then the last thing is I have a piece of basic white cardstock that I've cut 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I don't have a sentiment. Actually, I'm going to grab my Blackberry Bliss ink. And we'll stamp this this sentiment that says, "You're always so good to others, be good to yourself too." That's just so true. And we'll stamp that on the inside of the card in Blackberry Bliss. Now, I'm just going to test this. I always like to test and see how straight. Not too bad. Okay, let's see if we can do this. Use your grid paper to line yours up. Let's just do this again. Fairly straight. We'll see. Not too bad. Sometimes it's not as straight as I'd like, and sometimes it is. Yeah, no, Nancy, this is a great way. You don't always have to color the images. This is a great way. Just pick a darker color and do some embossing on it. Or you could do white and emboss it with like basic black or gold. All sorts of things. You know, any of the colors will work. I said I was inspired by the card I got from Glenda. She used Misty Moonlight. It just was so pretty. And so let's put that on the inside. There we go. All right, there we go. I think that's quite pretty. Now, that on. Okay. Yep, I think that's quite a pretty card. I'd love to get one of those in the mail. And that, yeah, I know, Alice, it's going to be sad that the Misty Moonlight is retiring. So every 2 years, Stampin' Up, well, every year Stampin' Up brings 5 new colors out. And so, and then every 2 years, those colors retire. So we get them for 2 years and then they retire. And we're always very sad about them retiring. Last year, we were all sad about Rococo Rose, Pretty Peacock, but we've moved on. Most of us have moved on. And we will move on again when Misty Moonlight and Cinnamon Cider and Just Jade and I've forgotten the other colors. Mango, Magenta Madness, and I'm forgetting one. Bumblebee. I will be very sad when Bumblebee and Misty Moonlight. Those are my absolute two favorites. But the new Stampin' Up! Colors will come out at the same time that the others retire, and hopefully we'll love those. And you never know, they may bring back some of the colors. They've done that before. Flirty Flamingo, Poppy Parade, Blackberry Bliss was an in color. And eventually they brought it back because we all loved it so much. So you never know what might come back. I don't think it'll come back immediately, but maybe in a year or two it will come back. But I do encourage you with the colors that are retiring, if you don't already have a reinker, make sure you buy them. They're not expensive. I always encourage people to buy a reinker when you buy a stamp set. That way you've got it. You'll be able to continue using your stamp pad even after it's retired. They go very quickly once the list, now we all know they're going to retire. And so, yes, Mossy Meadow wasn't in color a few years ago, and it's one of my absolute favorites. I was very sad when Mossy Meadow was retired, but it came back. Yeah, so the reinkers go very quickly once the retirement list comes out. So I would encourage you to check to see whether you have your reinkers, and if you don't, make sure you put them on your wish list and get that order in as quickly as you can, because there's nothing worse than having a stamp pad that you can't re-ink. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that card. I hope you'll try some embossing. Nancy, I definitely will hope to see one of your cards that you make using this technique. I will be back tomorrow at 12 noon Pacific with another card. And then I'll be live at 6:30 Pacific on Tuesday night with a sketch challenge for you. So, all right, everybody. Hope you have a great afternoon wherever you are. Thanks for joining me. Happy stamping. Bye.